Ethan Caldwell wasn't used to waiting. In his world, time was money and people showed up when they said they would, especially when the person they were meeting ran a company valued at over $500 million. But here he was, sitting alone at a small round table near the window of Le Jardin, a quiet French bistro tucked into a tree-lined street in downtown Seattle, watching raindrops slide down the glass like slow, silver tears. He checked his watch again. 7:22 p.m. The reservation had been for 7 wine. His sister had set this up. Another perfect match, she'd said, her voice bright with optimism over the phone. She's smart, grounded, works in nonprofit. You'll actually have something to talk about for once. He'd agreed more out of guilt than hope. His last 3 blind dates had ended before dessert, 2 with women who spent the entire meal talking about their crypto portfolios, and one who asked if he could sponsor her art show before the bread even arrived. He sighed and ran a hand through his dark, slightly tousled hair. Outside, the city lights shimmered through the wet pavement. Inside, soft piano music drifted from hidden speakers and the air smelled like rosemary, warm bread, and something faintly buttery. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. He felt oddly out of place. Not because he didn't belong, but because he was tired of pretending he did. At 7:30, he signaled the waiter and asked for a glass of sparkling water. No wine yet. No point in drinking alone unless he planned to stay long, and he didn't. He'd give it 10 more minutes, then leave. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through a few unread emails, then put it face down on the table. He made a rule for himself. No screens during meals, even fake ones. Just as he leaned back, the restaurant door opened with a soft chime. A young woman rushed in, shaking rain from her coat like a dog fresh out of a lake. She looked around, wide-eyed and slightly panicked, her cheeks flushed from the cold. Her coat was thin, too thin for October in Seattle, and one sleeve had a small, carefully stitched patch near the elbow. Her boots were scuffed, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun with a few strands escaping around her face. She clutched a worn canvas tote bag like it held something precious. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on Ethan's table, specifically the single-place setting, the untouched bread basket, the reserve sign leaning against the candle holder. For a split second, relief washed over her face. She walked over quickly, shoulders hunched as if apologizing for taking up space. "Oh, I'm so sorry I'm late," she said, breathless, already sliding into the chair across from him. "The bus broke down near Pike and I ran the last 8 blocks. My phone died so I couldn't call, and I swear I thought this was booth 12, but..." She stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes locked onto his. Confusion flickered across her face, then embarrassment. She looked around, really looked this time, and realized this wasn't her table. There was no second menu, no second water glass. Just him. "Oh my gosh," she whispered, her face turning pink. "I'm so sorry. I must have mixed up the tables. I was supposed to meet someone at booth 12, but they never showed, and I saw this reserved sign and just assumed." She stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor, drawing a few glances from nearby diners. "I'll go. I'm really sorry for bothering you." But something in her voice, the genuine fluster, the lack of pretense, made him speak before he could stop himself. "Actually," he said, his tone softer than he intended, "you're not the only one stood up tonight." She paused, one hand still gripping the back of the chair, the other clutching her bag like a shield. He gestured to the empty seat. "Might as well sit. I was about to order something to drown my disappointment anyway. And honestly, your timing's better than my dates." She hesitated, eyes searching his face for sarcasm or pity. Finding neither, she slowly sat back down. "Are you sure? I don't want to intrude." "You're not intruding," he said, offering a small, real smile this time. "Besides, I could use the company. And you look like you could use a hot drink." She let out a nervous laugh. "That's an understatement. I think my socks are still wet." The waiter appeared then, as if on cue. Ethan ordered 2 cups of coffee, black for him and whatever kind she liked. She asked for it with just a splash of milk, no sugar. When the waiter left, an awkward silence settled between them. But it wasn't heavy. It felt human. "So," he said after a moment, "what's your name?" "Maya," she said. "And you?" "Ethan." "Nice to meet you, Ethan." She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Even if it was by complete accident." "Sometimes the best things are," he said, surprising himself. He wasn't usually this open. She smiled then, a real one, warm and unguarded. It lit up her whole face. "I guess that's true. though I wasn't expecting my best thing tonight to be sharing a table with a stranger in a fancy restaurant. It's not that fancy, he said with a shrug. Just quiet. Good for thinking. Or for realizing your date ghosted you, she added dryly. They both laughed. And just like that, the tension melted. Over coffee, they started talking. Not about jobs or status or where they lived, but about little things. She told him about the book she was reading on the bus, a second-hand copy of The House on Mango Street. How she loved the rain even though it ruined her shoes, and how she used to draw portraits of strangers in coffee shops when she was in high school. He told her about growing up in a small town outside Portland, how he used to fix old radios with his dad, and how he still couldn't cook anything more complicated than scrambled eggs. He noticed she didn't ask what he did for a living. Most people did within the first 5 minutes. But she didn't seem interested in labels. She asked how he liked his coffee, not his net worth. When the waiter brought the check, she immediately reached for her bag. "Let me at least pay for my coffee," she said firmly. He didn't argue. He'd learned long ago that pride wasn't something to trample on, even with good intentions. She pulled out a small, worn wallet and counted out exact change, mostly ones and a few crumpled fives. He saw a bus pass tucked into the side pocket, and a photo of a boy who looked like her, grinning with missing front teeth. As they stepped outside, the rain had softened to a mist. He opened his umbrella automatically and held it over both of them as they walked toward the sidewalk. "You don't have to do that," she said quickly. "I'm used to walking in the rain." "I know," he said, "but I've got an umbrella, and it's big enough for two." She didn't argue. They walked in silence for a block, the city humming around them. Tires on wet pavement, distant laughter from a bar, the low hum of a passing streetcar. At the corner, she stopped. "This is my bus stop," she said, nodding toward the shelter ahead. "Thanks and for the coffee, and for not making me feel like an idiot for sitting at the wrong table." "You didn't," he said. "Honestly, you saved my evening." She smiled again, that same warm, quiet smile. "Well, take care, Ethan. You too, Maya." She stepped out from under the umbrella and into the mist. He watched her go, her thin coat darkening with moisture, her steps quick but steady. She didn't look back. He stood there for a long moment, the rain tapping gently on the fabric above him. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone in the crowd. He felt seen, not as a CEO, not as a success story, but just as a person, flawed, waiting, human. Back in his car, he didn't turn on the engine right away. He just sat there replaying the conversation in his head, the way she laughed at his bad joke about burnt toast, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her younger brother's science fair project, the quiet strength in her voice when she said, "I've been stood up before. You learn to carry your own hope." He didn't know it then, but that rainy evening, born from a mistake, wrapped in humility, and held together by 2 cups of coffee, would become the quiet beginning of everything. And the empty table? It wouldn't stay empty for long. 3 days passed, and the memory of that rainy evening wouldn't leave him alone. It wasn't just her smile or the way she spoke, like every word mattered, but the quiet dignity she carried even when soaked and embarrassed. He kept thinking about the patch on her coat, the careful way she counted her money, the photo of the boy in her wallet. She wasn't just passing through life. She was holding it together, stitch by stitch. On the 4th morning, he found himself driving past the diner he'd noticed her mention, something about the best pancakes within 3 bus stops. It was a small place near the edge of Capitol Hill, with red vinyl booths, a flickering neon sign that read Maggie's, and a window fogged from the steam of the kitchen. He parked down the street, suddenly nervous. What was he doing? Showing up like this felt strange, maybe even intrusive. But then he remembered how she'd looked when she said, "I'm used to walking in the rain." Like it wasn't a complaint, just a fact she'd made peace with. He walked in. The bell above the door jingled. The smell of coffee, bacon, and warm syrup filled the air. A few regulars sat at the counter, reading newspapers or scrolling on their phones. And there she was, behind the counter, apron tied snug around her waist, pouring coffee into a chipped mug with the ease of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. She looked up when the door opened, and her eyes widened slightly when she saw him. Not with surprise exactly, but with something softer like recognition. "Well," she said, setting the pot down, "fancy seeing you here." "I heard the pancakes are good," he said, trying to sound casual. "They're decent," she replied with a small smile. "But the coffee's better." He took a seat in the last booth by the window. She brought over a mug without asking, filled it to the brim. "Black, right?" He nodded, touched that she remembered. From then on, he came back. Not every day, just enough to feel natural. Tuesdays and Thursdays around 8 a.m. before his first meeting. He never ordered anything fancy, just coffee, sometimes toast. He never mentioned his job, never dropped hints about his life outside this diner. He just listened. He learned that she worked the morning shift before heading to her afternoon classes at the community college, that she lived in a small apartment with her younger brother, who was in 8th grade and obsessed with robotics, that she'd grown up in the same neighborhood, raised by a single mom who worked nights at a hospital until she got sick, that she'd been on her own since she was 22, but never once sounded bitter, just determined. One Thursday, he overheard her on the phone during her break, voice low but urgent. "Yeah, I know the rent's due Friday. I'll figure it out. Don't worry." She hung up, rubbed her temples, then forced a smile as she returned to the counter. Later that day, while walking to his car, he saw her outside the diner, kneeling beside an old sedan with the hood up. She was muttering to herself, hands covered in grease, trying to yank something loose under the engine. Rain had started again, light but steady. Without thinking, he walked over. "Need a hand?" She looked up, startled, then shook her head. "It's okay. I've dealt with this old thing before." "Looks like the alternator," he said gently. "If it's making that clicking sound when you turn the key, it's probably shot." She blinked. "You know cars?" "My dad taught me," he said. "Let me take a look." He rolled up his sleeves, ignoring the fact that they were expensive, and spent the next 20 minutes helping her jury-rig a temporary fix using spare parts from his trunk. It wasn't perfect, but it would get her home. As they stood up, both damp and a little dirty, she looked at him with something new in her eyes. Not suspicion, not gratitude, but curiosity. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. "Doing what?" "Being kind. You don't owe me anything." He met her gaze. "I'm not doing it because I owe you. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly as if deciding something. A week later, he got a call from a local auto shop. A woman had paid in cash for a full alternator replacement on a blue 2005 Corolla, but left no name, only a note. "For the umbrella you didn't take." He knew instantly it was her. But when he asked her about it the next morning, she just stirred her coffee and said, "Someone helped me once. I figured it was time to pass it on." He didn't correct her. He let her believe it was someone else. Because what mattered wasn't who fixed the car. It was that she'd chosen to believe in kindness even when life gave her little reason to. Their conversations grew deeper. She told him about her dream of opening a community center for kids who couldn't afford after-school programs. He told her about the loneliness of success, how people smiled at him but rarely saw him. They never flirted, not really. But there was a warmth between them, steady and real, like embers that refused to go out. One rainy afternoon after her shift ended, they sat in the diner's back booth long after closing. The owner, Maggie, a woman with silver hair and a laugh like gravel, waved them off with a wink. "Go on, you two. I'll lock up." They walked in silence for a while, sharing his umbrella again. The city felt quieter, softer. "You know," she said suddenly, "most people in your situation, they don't come to places like Maggie's. They don't talk to people like me." "What do you mean, people like you?" he asked. "People who work for tips, who count every dollar, who don't have fancy degrees or connections." "I don't care about any of that," he said honestly. "I care that you remember how I take my coffee. That you ask how my day was before telling me about yours. That you fight for your brother like it's the most important thing in the world, because it is." She stopped walking, looked at him. "You really mean that, don't you?" "I do," she exhaled like she'd been holding her breath. "I keep waiting for the catch. For you to want something. Everyone wants something. I want to know you," he said simply. That's all. She didn't respond right away. Just nodded, and they kept walking. A few days later, he saw her at the bus stop again, this time with her brother. The boy was tall for his age, wearing a backpack covered in robot stickers. She introduced him shyly. The kid shook Ethan's hand with serious eyes and said, "My sister says you're okay." Ethan smiled. "Your sister's got good judgment. The boy grinned then, just like the photo in her wallet. That night, Ethan sat in his quiet apartment staring out at the Seattle skyline. For years, he'd measured his life in deals closed, markets gained, problems solved. But now, for the first time, he found himself measuring it in small moments. The sound of her laugh over burnt toast, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, the quiet pride in her voice when she talked about her brother's latest invention. He didn't know where this was going. But he knew he didn't want it to end. And then, just as he was drifting off to sleep, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thanks for today, and for not making me feel small." He stared at the message for a long time. Then he typed back, "You've never been small." Not for a single second. He didn't expect a reply. But 10 minutes later one came. Maybe not. But it's nice to be reminded. He put the phone down, heart full in a way he hadn't felt since he was a kid fixing radios with his dad. Outside, the rain kept falling. But inside, something warm had taken root. Something real, something worth protecting. And for the first time in a long time, he wasn't in a hurry to fix it, change it, or control it. He just let it be. Life had a way of testing things just when they started to feel steady. For weeks, their quiet rhythm held. Mornings at the diner, short walks in the rain, texts that never said much but always meant something. He never pushed. She never pulled away. It was like two people learning to breathe in the same room without crowding each other. But then the cracks started to show, not between them, but in the world around her. One Tuesday, she didn't show up at the diner. That alone wasn't unusual. She sometimes swapped shifts for classes. But when he stopped by after work, Maggie told him Maya had called in sick. "Sounded exhausted," the older woman said, wiping down the counter with a sigh. "That boy of hers came down with something and she's been up all night." He wanted to go to her apartment, to knock on the door and ask if she needed anything. But he didn't. He remembered what she'd said. "I don't need saving." So instead, he did the next best thing. He called the small clinic near her neighborhood, the one she'd mentioned once, and anonymously paid for her brother's visit. Left no name. Just said, "Tell them it's covered." 2 days later, she was back at work, pale but smiling. She didn't mention the clinic. But when she handed him his coffee, she paused. "Someone paid for my brother's doctor visit," she said quietly. "I don't know who, but thank you." He didn't confirm it was him. Just met her eyes and said, "Good people still exist." She nodded, like she wanted to believe that. And maybe, for the first time, she did. But life wasn't done testing her. A week after that, she got a call during her break. He saw her step outside, shoulders tense, voice low. When she came back in, her hands were shaking slightly as she refilled the sugar shakers. Later, as he was leaving, he asked, "Everything okay?" She forced a smile. "Just landlord stuff. Rent went up again. Says the building's being renovated." She made air quotes with her fingers, bitter humor in her voice. "Guess I don't look like the kind of tenant they want anymore." He didn't say anything. But that night he made a call, not as a CEO, but as someone who knew how the system worked. He found out the building was owned by a small investment group. Not one of his companies, but one he could influence. He didn't buy the building, didn't threaten anyone. He just sent a polite email suggesting they reconsider sudden rent hikes for long-term tenants, especially single-income households with children. Within days, the landlord called her back. Said there'd been a miscommunication. The rent would stay the same for another year. Again, she didn't know it was him. But this time she started to suspect. Then came the car. Her old sedan, the one he'd helped patch up, finally gave out for good. She tried to fix it herself, but the engine wouldn't turn over. She missed 2 shifts because she couldn't get to work. On the 3rd morning, she showed up on foot, soaked from the rain, her shoes squelching with every step. He saw her limping slightly, her eyes red from lack of sleep. That evening, after she left, he went to a used car lot he trusted. Not flashy, not expensive, just reliable. A clean 5-year-old hybrid with low miles, good gas mileage, and winter tires. He paid cash, had it delivered to a garage 2 blocks from her apartment, left the keys with the mechanic and a note, "For the umbrella you didn't take." She found it the next morning, and this time, she didn't believe it was a stranger. She showed up at the diner early before her shift and waited for him. When he walked in, she was sitting in their usual booth, arms crossed, eyes sharp but not angry. You, she said simply. He sat down slowly. Me. You paid for the doctor, you got my landlord to back off, and now… A car? Her voice cracked slightly. Why? Because I care, he said. That's not enough, she said, leaning forward. You can't just fix my life like it's a problem to solve. I'm not a project. I know, he said gently. And I'm not trying to fix you. I'm trying to stand beside you while you fix it yourself. There's a difference. She looked away, out the window, where the city moved on like nothing was happening. I don't want your money, she said quietly. I want your respect. You have it, he said without hesitation. More than anyone I know. She turned back to him, eyes searching his face. Then prove it. How? Stop doing things behind my back. If you want to help, ask me. Don't assume I need saving. He nodded. You're right. I should have asked. A long silence. Then she sighed, the tension leaving her shoulders. The car. It's too much. It's not a gift, he said quickly. It's a loan. You can pay me back. $50 a month, no interest, for as long as it takes. She studied him, saw the truth in his eyes. Okay, she said finally. But only if you promise, no more surprises. I promise. She gave a small, tired smile. Good. Because I'm tired of feeling like I owe the universe something just for existing. You don't owe anyone anything, he said. Least of all me. From then on, things changed. Not in a dramatic way, but in the quiet shifts that matter most. She started telling him when things were hard. He started listening without jumping to fix them. She'd say, my brother's school needs new lab equipment, and they're asking parents to chip in. And he'd say, what do you think we should do? Not, I'll write a check. And she liked that. One afternoon after her class, she met him at a park near campus. They sat on a bench under a big oak tree, sharing a paper bag of apples from the farmer's market. You know, she said, crunching into a slice. I used to think people like you didn't really exist. People like me? People with everything, who still see people like me as equals. He looked at her. You're not people like you. You're just you. And you're the most real person I've met in years. She smiled, but there was sadness in it. I don't want to lose myself in your world. I've worked too hard to build this life, even if it's small. It's not small, he said. It's full. And I'd never ask you to leave it. She believed him. A few weeks. Later, she applied for a job, not at a diner, not at a retail store, but at a non-profit that partnered with his company's foundation. It was a community outreach role, helping design programs for underserved youth. She didn't tell him she'd applied. She wanted to earn it on her own. When she got the interview, she studied for days, practiced answers in front of her mirror, asked her brother to quiz her. The day of the interview, she wore her best blouse, the one with the tiny flowers, and walked in like she belonged. She got the job, and only then did she tell him. They met at the same park. She handed him a printed copy of the offer letter. I start next month, she said, trying to sound calm, but her eyes were shining. He read it slowly, then looked up at her. You did this all on your own. I did. No help from me? None. He smiled, proud in a way that had nothing to do with success and everything to do with her. Then I guess I'll see you at the office, she laughed. Don't get too comfortable, I'm still the same person who spilled coffee on your coat that first week. I hope so, he said, because that's the person I fell for. The words hung in the air, simple, honest, terrifying. She didn't say it back, not yet, but she didn't look away either. And in that moment, under the oak tree, with the city humming in the distance, they both knew. This wasn't about money or status or fixing each other. It was about choosing each other again and again, even when the world tried to pull them apart. And that was worth more than any car, any apartment, any blind date that never happened. Working in the same building changed everything, and nothing at all. She showed up on her first day in a simple navy dress, hair pulled back, portfolio tucked under her arm. She didn't look for him, didn't ask where his office was. She walked straight to the third floor, introduced herself to the team, and got to work. He watched from across the lobby, proud and a little nervous. This was her world now too, but on her terms. At first they kept things professional. Quick hellos in the hallway, polite nods in meetings. She never used their history as leverage. Never asked for special treatment. If anything, she worked harder than anyone else, staying late to revise proposals, calling community centers on her lunch break, showing up to site visits in worn sneakers and a determined smile. People noticed. Not just her work, but her. And not everyone liked it. It started with whispers. How'd she land that role? She used to wait tables, right? He must have pulled strings. She heard them, pretended she didn't. But he saw the way. Her shoulders stiffened when certain executives passed her in the hall without saying hello. Then came the gala, the annual charity dinner for the foundation, a black tie event held at a grand hotel downtown. She'd never been to anything like it. Borrowed a dress from a friend, practiced walking in heels in her living room, told her, "Brother, if I spill wine on the CEO, just pretend you don't know me." He met her in the lobby. She looked stunning, not because of the dress, but because of the quiet confidence she wore like a second skin. "You ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be," she said with a small laugh. Inside, the room glittered. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, champagne flutes clinking. She stuck close to him at first, not out of dependence, but because the sea of tailored suits and designer gowns felt like another planet. Then she met her. A woman in a red gown, sharp eyes and sharper smile, approached them during cocktail hour. She knew who he was. Everyone did. But when she looked at Maya, her gaze flickered with something cold. "So, this is your new assistant?" the woman said, voice dripping with false sweetness. "You must be thrilled to be here. It's not every day someone from your background gets to rub shoulders with real changemakers." Maya froze. He saw it, the flash of hurt, quickly buried under calm. But before he could speak, she stepped forward slightly, chin lifted. "I'm the community outreach coordinator," she said evenly, "and I helped design the youth mentorship program you just donated to. So thank you for believing in kids who don't always get a second chance." The woman blinked, caught off guard, then forced a laugh. "Of course, dear. How noble." She walked away, but the damage was done. Later, during dinner, Maya excused herself and didn't come back. He found her outside on the hotel's side patio, arms wrapped around herself, staring at the city lights. No tears, just quiet fury and something deeper. Shame. "She made me feel like I didn't belong," she said when he joined her. "Like I was just decoration. Or worse, a mistake." "You belong here more than most of them," he said fiercely. "Do I?" she asked, turning to him. "Or do I just belong with you? There's a difference." He didn't have an answer. She sighed. "I didn't come here to be your accessory. I came here because I earned it, but tonight it felt like none of that mattered." He wanted to rage at the woman, fire someone, buy a billboard declaring her worth. But he remembered his promise. No more fixing. So he just stood beside her. In the cold. In the silence. After a long while, she said, "I think I need to go." "Okay." He walked her to her car. His car, technically, but hers, in every way that counted now. She unlocked the door but didn't get in. "Do you ever wonder?" she asked softly. "If we're just pretending this can work? Like we're playing house in two different worlds, and one day the walls will fall down?" He looked at her, really looked, saw the fear beneath the strength. "I don't care about the walls," he said. "I care about you. And if the world doesn't make space for us, we'll build our own." She gave a small, sad smile. "It's not that simple." "I know," he said, "but love never is." She got in the car and drove away. For days she avoided him. Not out of anger, but distance. She needed to figure out who she was outside of his shadow, even if he never meant to cast one. He respected it. Didn't call. Didn't text. Just kept showing up to work, watching her from afar as she led meetings, presented ideas, earned respect one honest moment at a time. Then, one afternoon, she knocked on his office door. He looked up, surprised. She stepped inside, closed the door behind her. No coat, no bag. Just her, standing tall. "I've been thinking," she said. "About us. About what I said that night." He stayed quiet, letting her speak. "I was scared," she admitted. "Not of you. Of losing myself. Of becoming someone who only exists because you see me." "You could never be that," he said. "Maybe not," she said, "but I needed to prove it to myself." She took a deep breath. "So I applied for a promotion. Senior program director. It's a big role, more responsibility, more visibility." His eyes lit up. "You'll get it." "I might," she said. "But that's not why I'm telling you." She paused. "I'm telling you because I want you to know. I'm not staying in this job because of you. I'm staying because I believe in the work. And if we're going to be, whatever we are, it has to be as equals. Not CEO and waitress, not savior and saved, just two people choosing each other every day." He stood up slowly, walked around his desk until he was standing in front of her. "I choose you," he said simply. "Not your job, not your past, not your paycheck. You." She looked into his eyes and finally saw what she'd been afraid to trust, that he didn't love her, despite her life, but because of the person it made her. A week later, she got the promotion, and that night, instead of celebrating at a fancy restaurant, they went back to Maggie's diner, sat in their old booth, ordered pancakes and coffee. Maggie brought over 2 slices of pie on the house, winking as she set them down. "Knew you two would figure it out," they laughed. Outside, the rain fell softly, just like that first night, but this time, neither of them minded getting wet, because they weren't strangers anymore. They weren't CEO and waitress, they were just two people who'd crossed 1,000 invisible lines to find each other and decided again and again that the journey was worth it, and that was enough. 10 years can change a lot. Cities grow taller, kids grow faster, and hearts that once guarded every crack learn how to stay open. But some things stay the same, like the way rain smells in Seattle in October, like the quiet hum of a shared silence that doesn't need filling, and like a small round table at a French bistro with a flickering candle and 2 coffee cups waiting. They returned to Le Jardin every year on the same night, the anniversary of the evening that started it all. No fanfare, no speeches, just the two of them, sometimes with a sleepy-eyed boy in tow when he was younger. Now often just the two of them again, hands brushing under the table like they were still discovering each other. This year, the bistro looked almost unchanged. Same soft lighting, same piano music drifting through the air, same waiter who'd been there since the beginning and now greeted them with a knowing nod and 2 coffees before they even sat down. Outside, the city pulsed with life, but inside, time slowed. She stirred her coffee, smiling as she watched him glance out the window, lost in thought. He wasn't the same man who'd sat here alone, stiff in his suit, waiting for a date who never came. His hair was a little grayer now, his shoulders a little less tense. He'd traded boardrooms for classrooms, quarterly reports for bedtime stories, and somewhere along the way, he'd found a piece that no amount of money could buy, and she, well, she still wore her hair in that same messy bun when she was tired, still tucked stray strands behind her ear when she was thinking hard, still carried that quiet strength that made people lean in when she spoke. Only now people leaned in because she ran one of the most respected youth development nonprofits in the state. Because she'd helped build something real, a place where kids who once felt invisible could dream out loud. They'd opened the center together, of course. Not as CEO and employee, not as giver and receiver, but as partners, equal names on the deed, equal say in every decision. The building stood in the very neighborhood she'd grown up in, a bright, welcoming space with a robotics lab, a homework lounge, a kitchen where volunteers taught cooking classes, and a small library filled with books donated by strangers who'd heard her speak once and never forgot her words. Her brother, now a mechanical engineering student with a laugh that filled rooms, had designed the solar panels on the roof. He called it his thank you to the sister who'd worked double shifts so he could keep building robots instead of worrying about bills. They never had a big wedding. Just a courthouse ceremony on a Tuesday morning, her in a simple dress, him in a suit he'd worn to a meeting the day before. Her brother was the only guest, holding the rings in his pocket like they were made of gold. Afterward, they ate tacos from a food truck and walked along the waterfront, hand in hand, talking about nothing and everything. People sometimes asked how they made it work. Two lives that started in such different places. She'd always say the same thing. We didn't try to change each other. We just chose to walk together even when the path got muddy. And it had gotten muddy. There were fights about money, about time, about whether to expand the center or keep it small and personal. There were nights he came home exhausted from investor calls, and she was up with a sick kid from the after-school program because his mom was working the night shift. There were moments of doubt, loneliness, fear that they were asking too much of each other, but they always came back. To the table. To the truth. To the choice. Now, as they sat in that familiar booth, the rain tapping gently against the window, he reached across and took her hand. "Remember how you thought I was your blind date?" he said, eyes twinkling. She laughed. "I was so embarrassed. I thought you'd think I was desperate." "I thought you were brave," he said. "Walking into a place like this, soaked to the bone, and still offering an apology like you'd done something wrong." "You hadn't. You were just human. And you were kind," she said softly. "Not because you had to be, but because you chose to be." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the rain blur the streetlights into golden streaks. "Do you ever miss the old days?" she asked after a while. "The big offices? The private jets? All that noise?" He shook his head. "I don't miss the noise. I miss the drive, the feeling that I was building something. But now," he looked at her, "now I'm building something that matters. With someone who matters." She squeezed his hand. "We did good, didn't we?" "We're still doing it," he said. Later, as they walked out into the misty night, he opened his umbrella, the same one he'd used that first evening, though it had been replaced twice since. She stepped under it without hesitation. They didn't go straight home. Instead, they walked toward the center. It was closed, but the lights were on in the front office. Someone had left them on by accident. Through the window, they could see the mural on the wall, a tree with roots shaped like hands and branches filled with stars. At the bottom, in bold letters, a quote she'd written herself. "You don't need permission to belong. You just need someone who sees you." He stopped walking. "That's us, isn't it?" She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Yeah, that's us." They stood there for a long time, not speaking, just breathing in the quiet of the night. The city around them didn't know their story. Didn't know about the empty table, the borrowed umbrella, the car that wasn't a gift but a promise. Didn't know how two people from different worlds had built a bridge between them, not with money or power, but with patience, respect, and daily acts of choosing each other. Again and again, back in the car, she turned to him. "Next year, should we try a new place? Maybe somewhere with better coffee?" He smiled. "Never. This table's ours," and it was. Not because of fate or coincidence, but because they'd returned to it year after year. Not out of habit, but out of love. As they drove home, the rain easing into a soft drizzle, she reached over and turned on the radio. An old song came on, something slow and sweet from their early days. He reached for her hand again and she let him hold it. No grand gestures, no dramatic speeches. Just two people side by side living a life they'd built together. One honest choice at a time. And in a world that often felt loud and broken, that was more than enough.